CNBC TV 18 presents the Green Vision Forum in association with IBM.
Hello everyone and a warm welcome to CNBCTV18.com presents the Green Vision Forum in association with IBM. I'm Swati Shahi. As part of an exclusive campaign, we gather here today with industry leaders to deliberate on embedding sustainability at the highest echelons of business. Sustainability is no longer a choice, but a need. At this stage, it's not just about saving the planet, but also becoming a necessity to save our own selves. Now, sustainability is not limited to the environment. It translates to economic stability and social cohesion. And the Green Vision Forum 2023 seeks to emphasize this. Sustainability stands for conservation of our depleting natural resources and sustaining our needs without compromising on the future. Over the years, the glaring temperatures, rising sea levels, and shortage of natural resources has only established that sustainability is in fact the need of the hour. The clock is ticking and natural preservation demands immediate action. And today, through our series of high-level deliberations with visionaries and corporate leaders, we aim to explore how the quest for sustainability is reshaping business objectives. The event today brings to life global tech innovator IBM, India's 50-year-old pledge towards sustainability and conservation. And to kickstart the event, we have a specially curated presentation on From Ambition to Action, Sustainability Trends and Best Practices. With an experience of over 25 years, this innovator has held multiple senior executive roles in the organization and has orchestrated many strategic digital projects to rapidly realize business value, and is now responsible for IBM's consulting, systems integration, and application services business in Singapore. Please join me in welcoming Arun Biswas, Managing Partner, Strategic Sales, Sustainability Consulting, IBM Asia Pacific. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause.
Thank you, and a very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of IBM to this Green Vision Forum. First of all, I would like to just mention that the way we envisage this forum is as an ongoing dialogue. And I'm really happy to see all of you come here and spend your time on something which we are all very, very passionate about. What I'm going to do is to share some of our experiences in IBM and my own personal experience over the last 2 years, where we have studied literally thousands of different organizations and looked at how they are driving the sustainability agenda, especially looking at the challenges they are facing and how they're overcoming these challenges. And what we'll also do is that we'll look at how the entire sustainability debate and the agenda itself is evolving. So first, the first lesson which we have learned from the last 2 years' experience is that sustainability is a disruptive force and it is impacting industries, and I hope all of you are feeling that as well. There are 4 key kinds of disruptions which I'll highlight. The first one, which all of us are very well aware, is net zero transition. This is probably the most urgent part of sustainability, the whole climate transition piece. The point to note here is that it is quite complex, it is uncertain, and it's creating winners and losers. We just have to look at one industry, auto for example, and look at a company like Tesla, which probably did not exist a decade ago, and in no time it has come to a point where its market valuation is more than the top 3 other competitors. The second aspect of sustainability, which is causing disruption, is regulation. And not only is there just a lot of different standards and frameworks out there, what we are now seeing is increasingly these frameworks are becoming much more broader and tighter. In India, you have the BRSR framework, which has now become mandatory for organizations from June onwards. In June also, globally, the ISSB has released its first draft called S1 and S2. Now, with all these, what's happening is that these are becoming part of your mandatory reporting, and regulators are demanding that you have information which is not only transparent but verifiable and auditable. And that is imposing a lot of burden on companies. The broadening of the regulation agenda is now going beyond climate to include things like biodiversity, social, etc., and so on. The third area is customer trust. Now, as part of our research in the last 2 years, we interviewed over 20,000 customers to look at their changing attitudes towards sustainability. And one thing we realized is that we asked them a simple question: how much do you trust sustainability reports published by organizations? 2 years back, 50% of the population responded saying, yes, they do trust the reports. Earlier this year, when we did the same survey, that number had fallen to 20%. So there is skyrocketing distrust, and something which we need to be mindful of, because this could become a very, very disruptive force. And finally, and all of you are aware of the fact that while we talk about sustainability in the future, it's already happening now. We are seeing disruptions in the form of extreme weather, especially in India, which is quite vulnerable to all these climate changes. This is becoming a huge issue. The other trend which we have seen is that there is realization now that sustainability, or ESG, can actually drive greater value. We interviewed about 3,000 CEOs, and this was the response we got. Over 2/3 of them now see ESG as a value enabler. And if we started digging deeper into this question and looked at what are the elements which are driving value, and we saw that organizations that have more mature ESG capabilities are actually able to drive greater revenue growth, up to 10% higher revenue growth. They're able to be much more likely to be more profitable, as well as get better customer engagement and be able to manage risks much better. And these are all based on surveys that we have carried out. And because they are able to manage risks better, they are also able to get much more access to capital much more easily. But despite all this, one thing has been quite consistent in the last 2 years. In our CEO surveys, we have found that sustainability ranks as the #1 challenge. And while almost all companies that we talk to have some kind of a sustainability vision and a proposition, more than 95% in fact, very few of them, less than 10%, have actually been able to make significant progress. So then the question came to us as to why. Now, why is this so difficult? And I'm sure some of you are feeling that difficulty as you're driving the agenda within your different industries. And our surveys and our research came back with one very surprising answer, and that's data. So we asked executives about what are the key challenges they face, and consistently there was one thing which was quite common, which is data. More than regulatory barriers, more than customer resistance, the lack of data came out very, very prominently. And it's not quite surprising, because without the right kind of data, you won't be able to drive the right kind of decisions to be able to become more sustainable. Not only that, you won't be able to drive the transparency which is required to be able to engender some trust from the customers. And you won't be actually able to report and measure what matters. So we then started looking at, are there any companies who actually are able to do this well? And of our entire population, we found that about 14% of the companies are able to drive sustainability KPIs at the same time as driving profitability. To us, this was a good subsegment. So I personally interviewed about 50 executives from these kind of companies to understand what are these guys doing right, which others are not. And we came across 5 best practices, and I'm sure some of these will resonate with you also, as in your own sphere you're driving sustainability. The first best practice was look at it as a business opportunity. And this is more like a mindset shift than anything else. And there are 2 numbers here, you'll be familiar with this. The first is 3 trillion. That's the amount of incremental annual investment that we globally need to do to drive towards net zero. Roughly about $125 trillion. That's not a small amount of money. Some of you are from the financing background, and you'll know that it's a huge amount of money to be put in. And for India, that number is roughly in the range of 250 billion. Some say it's almost as high as 450 billion. So these are big numbers we are talking about. That means there is business opportunity. But it's not easy to unlock. So let's look at the second best practice, which will start helping companies unlock that. The second one we noticed was we need to drive sustainability, or the companies who are actually doing well, they were driving sustainability across the entire organization. They were shifting from a compliance focus, whereby you have one department called sustainability and expect that department to do everything, to embedding sustainability across the entire company. And this is very important because the shift that has to happen is to start looking at sustainability as an enterprise-wide change management program, with every executive having a certain KPI linked to sustainability and their pay linked to sustainability. Unless it is embedded at that level, it will be very difficult to drive change. The third best practice, which we noticed these companies were driving, where they were not staying at a high level. They were not just saying that we need to get to net zero by 2050, we need to get to 50% of net zero by 2030. They were actually embedding sustainability in their structures and processes, right down to their assets, their supply chains, their operations, focusing on things like asset efficiency, energy efficiency, materials efficiency. And that's where we notice that if you drive efficiency in these areas, assets, materials, and energy, you automatically drive efficiency in profitability and cost as well. So they were quite clever in decomposing KPIs down to the granular level and actually driving change through that. The fourth best practice we noticed was use of technology. For these companies who were able to drive both profitability and sustainability, their biggest friend was technology. And not just the core technology, but technology related to data, digital, and AI. They were masters at using data, digital, and AI. On one hand, they were using it to build the data foundation required to drive the KPIs and measures and all of that. On the other hand, they were using new and emerging technology like AI, IoT, etc. IoT sensors, for example, using the IoT sensors to drive precision agriculture, or using AI to do renewables forecasting and balance the grid. So we also had instances whereby organizations were using this to solve problems which were thought unsolvable. For example, we are using quantum computing now to do research on how to really make new materials which can absorb carbon better, or how to resolve complex algorithms whereby complex routes need to be planned for companies who have large number of shipping vessels. Or even our latest collaboration with NASA, which uses generative AI to create a chat GPT-like engine for earth sciences. So from the basics to the actual use of the latest cutting edge technology, technology has the biggest impact on sustainability. And finally, the fifth best practice is all about ecosystem. This is not something which any one company can drive on their own. And as we have seen, that new kinds of ecosystems are being formed, not just within an industry, but also across an industry. An example that comes to mind is Ørsted, the energy company which now moved from oil and gas to wind. They started collaborating with steel makers who make their turbines and supplied them with green power to make steel. In return, got the steel to make their turbines, and they formed a circular economy. The turbines, when they were disposed, went back into the steel making process. So we are seeing very interesting, not just within industry, but cross-industry collaborations. And we are quite clear that without an ecosystem approach, this is not going to work. So with that, the final thought here is, as we go into our discussions, the panel discussions, the final thought here is that sustainability and profitability are not at odds. And we need to drive both. And hopefully this sets a good context for the discussions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun, for sharing those interesting and valuable insights. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the first conversation of the evening. As we know that climate change and persistent depletion of resources is no longer a hidden phenomena, it has become imperative for us to embrace and implement sustainability, not just as an exercise, but as a way of living. However, for businesses adapting to more long-term sustainable solutions while maintaining its age-old established strategy might seem like a daunting task. To address this problem and navigate solutions, we have a very special discussion, the CEO Dialogue, Turning Ambition to Action. And to moderate the session, may I please invite on stage my colleague Sonal Bhutra, Senior Research Analyst and Markets Anchor, CNBC TV18. I would also like to welcome her fellow panelists. Let's welcome all of them with a huge round of applause, please. Ashish Dobal, CEO, UPL, Sustainable Agriculture Solutions. Madhav Pai, CEO, WRI. Govind Singh, MD and CEO, Utkarsh Small Finance Bank. And Raman Kalra, VP and Senior Partner, Communications Sector Leaders and Sustainability Consulting Leader, IBM. Sonal, over to you.
Okay, good evening, and thank you all of you for joining us here, and welcome to a special session of CEO Dialogues. Of course, noble intentions can only go so far. They must be backed by real action as well, and that's especially true for India's emerging sustainability transition, which promises to turn the country into a crucible for future-ready innovation and give our businesses the chance to lead the sustainability agenda. To help build on this idea further, we have with us the industry leaders who have witnessed momentous shifts before and are here to tell us how we can ace the next one. So, gentlemen, as in the presentation we saw him telling us that the number one challenge that CEOs have right now is sustainability as the transition that we are looking at. So all of you are spearheading that cause as well. Mr. Ashish, let me come to you, because we are talking about this big transition taking place. What are the key incentives and opportunities that businesses or leaders like yourself are looking at?
Yeah, thanks, Sonal. It's a fantastic question. I think very important. Today, I represent UPL and UPL SAS, which is UPL Sustainable Agro Solutions. It's not an incentive, but it's a necessity. Agriculture, we all know, is marked by climate and weather is so important. Climate change, which we used to think would come in next 4 to 5 decades, is right now in our face. So I think climate change itself is the biggest thing through which this transition to sustainability has to be made. Water shortages is something which is there, and I think right now as a company, we are trying to transition purely from a input company to a output-driven company. That how can we have climate-smart products, and we are making a huge shift from climate-smart products, from pure input products to climate-smart products, and also drought-resilient technologies. With that. The other incentive, of course, is there's a lot of consumer at the consumer end. I think everybody wants a product which is sustainably grown. We also have a lot of investor interest, right? The investors. I think there's a big mandate with a lot of investors also who wants to, have invest into companies having sustainability, who are driving sustainability. We also are looking at a place where there's a huge labor shortage. So for agriculture to continue over next, many generations, you need to figure out ways how you can manage the labor shortage problem. So I think precision agriculture is something which is both a requirement and an opportunity both. So I think for me it's more than incentive; it is the dire need of the hour.
Okay, it's a need, not an incentive. Mr. Kalra, we were having this conversation about how technology is very important here, how technology can be enabler. But the current geopolitical situation that we are in, we saw some conversations are around how transition won't be the possibility in the near future. Do you think that could disable, or I would say slow down the pace of transition that we are talking about? How can technology play a role here?
I think that's a very pertinent question. And the biggest example of that is the whole world side talking about energy transition. And moment the Russia-Ukraine war happened, the debate became energy security. So the whole European countries where the electricity bill for a household went from 50 pound to 500 pound, transition was not on their mind. And obviously for right reasons at that point in time. You want to first sustain yourself also, right? So I think that the whole geopolitical things will always continue playing a role. That has been always the case. It will always be a case. Now, what should one therefore be doing in that case? I'll give you one example. In India, we talk about setting up 500 gigawatt of green energy, solar and wind, and so on and so forth, right? At the same time, the current infrastructure that we have, which is largely fossil based, we are living it at 20% plus technical and commercial losses. Don't you think it's criminal to talk about climate finance to set up incremental capacity and not do anything about 20% losses, which is already there in the electricity grid? So I think those are the problems which digital can solve so easily. Right? Of course, a lot of regulation need to kick in, a lot of drive from the government need to kick in, which thankfully is happening now under Prime Minister Modi leadership. It is happening very well now. But the solutions around smart metering which are going on in the country right now, the grid flexibility solutions which are all on the back of digital, can plug in that 20% gap. So this is just to give an example, and this example is from the power industry. Likewise, pick any industry, So there are ways and means in which digital can come to force and help you do more from less. And isn't that also the core of sustainability? So I think one need to strike a balance between how much and when the climate finance will always be in place, how the geopolitical issues will pan out. The commodity prices will always keep fluctuating dramatically with geopolitical price, right? The whole wind industry and solar industry is so dependent on the commodity price forecast, and it completely turns around the financial viability at times. So I think those are not unknown factors anymore. The organizations need to be smarter about predicting the future better. They need to be smarter about generating finance from within their own operations, and make sure that the agenda doesn't get lost. Because if the agenda gets lost, then we will get lost at some point in time. That's the whole reality of planet Earth right now. Yeah.
There's no planet B. That's the reality. So we have to work on that. Talking about climate finance, I would like to take that point up with you, because while we are talking about this big transition, where will this money come from? Do the banks or financial institutions, they are willing to fund this? Would this be a return generating asset, or would this be something which would be profitable as well for them?
Yeah, I think so. Though we are a small bank, so may not be in that big league, but still I have seen all the FIs and all these large banks. I think they are into the space, and they have actually dedicated funds for these purposes. So my sense is it's not the fund that may be a big issue, and it's from both sides, from equity side also, because we know a lot of equity players, the PE players, they have a dedicated funds for equity, for sustainable, and even for the debt side. So funding is not a problem. I think the way we have understood from others also, it is how we deal with this situation, how we practically implement, in the field. I think that's going to be more important. And some of the things you spoke about, say things like technology. I think banking is one example, because I'm a hardcore practitioner, so I can talk about my own experience. So today we are talking about 100% accounts getting open through digital onboarding only. We don't use any paper. And I work more in the interior of UP and Bihar. In fact, I'm just coming from Banaras only. So when you go to interior of UP and Bihar, Mirzapur and Gazipur of the places, and there it is 100% digital onboarding only, e-stamping, e-signing, and no use of paper at all. I think these are some of the examples. We can do our bit. In fact, I got delayed because in morning we gave 10 segways to local police authorities. In fact, Banaras being a now tourist place, so tourist police wanted that part. So we suggested, in fact, it was Commissioner Police who wanted that we should give in this way. There's very small things, small contribution as a practitioner we can do. In fact, we are going to launch our second marathon in Varanasi. Again, it is a first timer. The moment it came, it is my team which told that we should make it eco-friendly. In fact, we decided not to use any polyester type of t-shirts. We'll use only cotton t-shirts only. So I'm not sure, I'm not expert of this area, whether I'm really helping environment or not, up to what extent I'm helping. But as a layman, I think we can do this part. As a banker, we can do digital onboarding. We can do funding part. We are seeing equity. We are seeing debt. And in fact, we have our own tower in Varanasi. Getting place was difficult. We have a headquarters in Varanasi, and this is eco-friendly. In fact, Griha rated 5x, the top-rated Griha certified building we have created in Varanasi, which gives 140 kilowatt of solar energy also from the same building. So I think as a banker, as a layman, there are a lot of things we can do. And again, just to mention, equity and debt is not a challenge. That is my sense, the way things are happening.
Okay, so that is good to know that there is finance available. Of course, I'll take everyone's vote on that as well. Mr. Singh, Mr. Pai, let me come to you. Apologies. There are ideas, there is the willingness to do it, but is it difficult to collaborate the entire supply chain to ensure that each leg of the output is ensuring sustainability?
Of course, I mean, it's a transition, right? So everybody is going through a change. So of course there will be challenges. There are bottlenecks in the supply chain. See, simple things are being done right now. Corporate customers are asking. At least 20,000 companies have now disclosed, their carbon footprint, etc. Because through CDP, because that's so slowly. I think on the supply chain we will start to see some of these things. But there are three elements, right? We always say this is about people, it's about nature, it's about climate, right? And if we can bring technology, we can bring, but unless we address the people side of the issues, we will not be able to achieve this goal, right? So I see 40% of, I mean, it is a very high level sort of estimate, but 40% of the emission reduction will happen with big actions, right? The transition to green hydrogen, big policy decisions. 20% now, IEA has also predicted we can happen from individual actions. Prime Minister has launched the Mission Life. This middle 40%, which is what is going to require what we call distributed observability. Communities have to do, companies have to do, every player in the supply chain has to do. This is the hardest, right? That's why technology can play a role, can be a backbone, but we need a lot of capacity building, and we also need to make sure that a larger set of people are able to participate in solving these problems. That's when we'll achieve it. So, just blaming the supply chain is not going to solve, right? I mean, this is somebody who is today, in a textile organized, or somehow they've been badly hit by COVID, so it's quietly they're moving. Natural gas prices have gone up, so they're quietly moving to using lignite today or PET, because, so I think so there are some realities, and I think we have to think about ways in which we can really design solutions that are not just technology, that actually have the right institutions, the right incentives, so that we are able to carry along all of these people as we try to. So supply chain, this is going to be the biggest bottleneck, but this is where also we need innovation, not only in technology, but in institutional design, in ways, and I think, that way in India, I think Aadhaar is one of the best examples, right? The beauty of Aadhaar, right? And again, how innovation was driven. It was not about this, the fact that how they designed the system, right? In the end, if you wanted an Aadhaar, somebody had to generate an Aadhaar card. They said, we'll give you a 140 rupees, you generate the Aadhaar card. Then that drove the innovation in sort of very cheap biometric, and we were able to do distributed observability. We were able to see millions of locations. Similarly, like how can we leverage technology to do these distributed actions will be one of the critical sort of challenges. And so will require innovation in multiple places, will require institutional innovation, and I think, and technology will play a critical role. So I think we have to bring all of this together to achieve this big goal.
You're right. Reality and practicality are two things which have to come together to ensure that this transition happens. Let me come to you, because we were having this conversation about how, yes, the boardrooms, they want to do this, but the ground reality sometimes becomes a little different than what they're planning. So how can one maximize innovation and then ensure that you can actually quantify that and also minimize the disruption that it could cause?
No, you're absolutely right. Especially in India, if you see one of the biggest problems to drive anything is the fragmented nature of the land holdings, right? We have smallholder farmers. If I have to drive a transition in, let's say, Brazil, where one farmer is 8,000 hectares, it's very easy to drive. But in India, it has to be convinced. A lot of farmers have to be convinced if you are trying to drive a change. I think one of the things that at least we've done is, we just saw a presentation. I think digital is the way to go forward, I think, to reach out to so many people, and also to give any sort of traceability with such a huge fragmented base. You need to have technology, you need to have data, you need to, because, if you are saying that the X number of farmers have produced something sustainable, you need to prove it at the end of the day to the end customer. And that's only possible if you have a digital trail of traceability. So I think that's something which is very, very important. The other thing, of course, is, before you even start that, the vision needs to be very clear because there are so many different regulatory frameworks. There are so many, the whole definition of sustainability at various stakeholders level is so different that before you even start, like, for example, if as a company we are transitioning from a input-driven company to output-driven company, what exactly is the definition of, let's say, a sustainably grown rice or a sustainably grown groundnut? That definition first has to be unambiguous. I think it has to be understood by everybody. And then you need to sort of empower people, and then, you need to make sure that, you are actually having a proper digital trail for that.
Okay. So do you agree with that? Because when we are talking about this transition coming in, some challenges on the ground level, even though we have a technology chain there.
Yeah, okay, I do agree completely, to what Ashish said, that, and before that, to your point, there is, of course, there is a very clear difference between what gets discussed in the boardroom discussions in the board and what gets adopted. And that also was evident from another point that Arun was showing, in the survey that we did, that more than 90% of the CEOs believe that it is the number one priority for them, not just a challenge, priority for them. And still less than 10% seem to have made a progress. Now, this gap is, of course, there for some reasons, right? The reason could be intent. Some do it just because of compliance. You don't have a choice. You got to do for compliance, so you do it. But for compliance, you can do only ESG reporting. So for some organization, the needle stops at ESG reporting, and that is the end of sustainability. But to pick example of what Ashish was talking about, and the kind of work that is happening at the ground level with the farmers, a lot of technology can come to play over there. And you are doing a lot of work with Nurture.farm, for example, the venture that you have. Absolutely. In terms of whether it is a blockchain traceability, in terms of helping the farmers to make the most of their yield, in terms of marketplace price realization, cut the middlemen out of the value chain and have the maximum price of your yield, to have technology for much better. So there is a core technology which comes, let's say, picking up the same example, which is to do with the crop protection, which is a core technology, let's say, which is also the core technology on solar cells or wind turbines. But then there is a digital technology, and both kind of coexist, both play a role interchangeably. And then the magic starts happening. If you just stay back and focus on what will happen on, let's say, solar, and when the solar module cell price will go down, then it becomes even more efficient. By the way, that journey has happened in the last 10 years. But at the same time, if you leverage digital, you can, in solar, if you by leveraging good AI, ML, digital technologies and good weather forecasting, weather predictions, you can have yield go up by 3 to 5%. Now imagine that 3 to 5% is also equivalent of climate finance not required for incremental capacity. So everywhere you see, when digital comes into play to make more out of less, in a way we are reducing our dependency on climate finance, and that's the beauty of technology, that's the beauty of digital, I think, and that's how people need to start seeing it now. Then the whole question of cost versus profit will go away, because it is hardcore profit.
Yeah, it is. But is digital taking away climate finance and people's role as well in the fight against climate change?
That it won't. I wish digital could generate money out of it, but not in real terms.
We wish that, right? Let me come to you, because climate finance continues to be the big point, right? It's not only for developing nations, coming from developed nations, within the country as well. We need finance to fight this menace. You spoke about how small finance banks are doing it. Bigger banks for sure are doing it. Green bonds are one way where government is pushing a lot of green finance, so to say. What is the glide path here? How do you look at this particular field?
So my sense is, one is regulatory is very clear about this part, and that's why you see a lot of incentive. I mean, when we say priority sector lending and earmarking some amount for this, the only challenge with, especially with the banks, remains that I think they may not have expertise in this field. If you remember the way Arun mentioned about two things, I mean, it's also linked with the finance part. One is the awareness part. Even today, as I mentioned, I'm a layman for this purpose. I don't have the type of awareness. I may not have that, but at least I may not have even 10% of the type of awareness he has got. That is one part. And second is the measurability. So bankers ka ek bada challenge rehta. They always want something measurable, in fact, and especially when you're doing something for something beyond general financing. So I think these two things will be important, and where we have the experts, they can help us in doing that part. And and which can go to masses, in fact. It's not only, as everyone mentioned about the boardrooms. So it happens in boardroom because I think board people, they read at multiple places, they will chat GT ke saath mein thoda, climate finance ke bare mein baat kar lenge. But the moment I go to my field and meet these bachcha, they will have no clue about that part. We need to reach that level where we are able to make it measurable and create awareness. Otherwise, I think from the RBI side, from the regulatory side, and even the global finance, who are there, they are keen to do it. But it takes, it requires a lot of time to reach that level. Even when project finance came earlier, it took almost, and even not every bank was not doing project finance. So I think some expertise is required. That may be a challenge. Otherwise, it's a PSL, it's a priority sector lending, and things should, there is concessional cost also. I mean, in terms of cost of funds also.
Yes.
That should happen.
I'll just add to it, to your point, you're actually doing such phenomenal work, which a lot of that doesn't get spoken much. The small bank ecosystem is doing so much on financial inclusivity for society.
Yes.
And that financial inclusivity is a core of sustainability. When we talk about ESG, unfortunately, the needle stops at E. People talk of environment and nothing else, right? But the social part of it, financial inclusivity, which gets triggered with small banking, is phenomenal. So I think all the pieces are linked together. Yeah.
Certainly, yes. So measurability becomes important. So for example, we have 37 lakh customers. Out of 30 lakh are women customers under JLG model, in fact, in the entire UP Bihar type that our belt. But as you mentioned, under ESG, it doesn't get counted. That's a challenge.
It's a collaboration of E, S, and G.
Yeah.
We are looking at environment right now, but of course that does make sense. So, let me come to you because we've spoken so much about capital technology. One of the biggest contentions have been transfer of technology. We've discussed it at COP as well, international level. We've discussed it in India as well. One of the missions in life as well has been about that, right? When the press release came out that India would look and would like other countries to ensure transfer of technology. Would that be a challenge, or do you think India is self-sufficient here?
I mean, that clearly is a challenge for some things. Like now, if you think about hydrogen, right? India just launched the green mission on hydrogen. It's, they want to now create 5 million metric tons of hydrogen by 20. I mean, the electrolyzer technology, we need electrolyzer to be produced in a scale that is not even there in the world, right? So now the question is, can technology transfer accelerate that? Can some of it be indigenous? I think it's going to require all of that, right? So we also have to, traditionally, India also has not had, an ecosystem where, innovation has been driven. So we are really missing that institutional structure. Today, if you look at battery chemistry, right? I mean, we are today, all the battery chemistries we are importing, right? There's a huge, now, we are starting to see, new zinc-based batteries, much more simpler sort of, technologies. But still, I think that structured ecosystem, right? So typically, in academia, there is this concept of value of death, right? In India, there is a lot of good things happening in the labs. We are seeing, probably 1,000 technologies that were required to send Chandrayaan, right, could be commercialized. But are they coming to engineering? No, there's a value of death, right? So how do we move from science to engineering in a prototype phase to get to mass production? That is a big missing piece. I think that is one thing that India, so in the US, for example, they have the 60 system of 17 labs whose job is to bring things from academia to industry. So I think this is a big missing piece so one of the things is technology transfer is required, but also we need to build this institutional infrastructure so that we are able to then start to sort of, do next generation things. Also do things that are context sensitive, right? Today, for example, India has, if we were just doing, we have these e-rickshaws, right? It's a massive problem. E-rickshaws require a specific type of batteries. They have to, we are just closing our eyes, they're operating. The number of e-rickshaws are like, I don't know, close to like 5 million e-rickshaws or something like that. It's a big market. E-rickshaw requires 2 batteries a year, right? That's such a big market. It needs an innovative product that works for Indian conditions. It's mostly where there's heat and dust and all of that. Where's the innovation infrastructure to sort of find that product, right? Some startups are trying, and that's so I think this, how do we systematically build this, becomes a very, very critical piece in our journey. And we've been looking at some of these things, right? I think about 100 billion is required. We've done some modeling on net zero, and, but 100 billion is required by 2030 in India, additional green additionality. Most of that investment is going to come from private sector, right? But where does it go? You know, what are the moonshots we invest in? What do we invest in creating this institutional infrastructure? What do we invest in doing more routine things? I think a combination, that portfolio we have to get right as a country, and how much of that we've achieved through technology transfer and all of that. So I think it's a combination of these things. But like there's just a tremendous amount of work that is required, knowledge work that is required on this, and I think that is a big bottleneck. And I think both private sector can play a critical role in it, but there are certain very catalytic role that government can play, public sector can play, and that is also required.
No, that point is absolutely taken, because once the supply chain hit, the first things that got impacted was product ecosystem in India. So we've been always software resilient, or software, we didn't depend on anyone for software, but did for products. So we need to build that ecosystem. We don't have much time for more discussion, but I would like your closing comments, because we have a congregation here, which is the Green Vision Forum. We are facilitating a conversation. I wanted to understand from the three of you now, what is your idea around it? What would some of the challenges, and some of your closing comments as well about the gathering that we have, and what more could be done as well?
No, I think Sonal, fantastic forum. First, because there are 2-3 barriers to it. So I think, for example, we all know there is a need for sustainably grown food. If I talk about agriculture, everybody wants it. And but if you want to grow sustainably grown food, then there are some initial technologies in which the investments have to be paid, right? Who pays for those investments? Even if you manage to do that and you somehow figure a way out to make sustainably grown food, then who buys that food? Who pays for sustainability? So there are a lot of players. There are input players, there are output players, there are technology players in this, and this is not one one sector's job. I think there are various stakeholders that need to come on board, and where forums like this can really spread awareness. I think technologies are all there. I think funding is all there. Technologies are all there. There are people who are willing to buy, but who the connection of all this, connecting the dots, have to be in forums like this. And this is what we were discussing, that we need to just make sure that we are continuing this whole thing over next few forums, and actually making something which is where you are actually getting some critical mass.
Yeah, we will be able to quantify that. That's the idea, the ground impact. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I think this is a really wonderful forum, and my only suggestion will be, this forum can be made at a smaller locations also, places which are smaller locations. When I say places like Kanpur, Lucknow, and Ranchi type of places, it makes a big difference, because sometimes, I mean, the real implementation should happen in those places also. I'm not saying it should not happen in Mumbai and Delhi, but should happen there also. And I repeat my two points I mentioned. One is the measurability. That will be important when you expect, organized sector to come forth and do that part, especially banks also. Funding will become much easier, and awareness. Certainly, I think mass level awareness will be critical. The last point from my side will be, it's like a movement, in fact. If you look at, and it's not going to be easy. I think next 10, 15, 20 years are going to be really tough from that angle. Maybe when we talk of Aadhaar was, single-minded and given to one gentleman, and he really did it. But this is not going to that way, because each and everyone's response and support is required. So government sector, PSU structure, and private sector, all three have to come together, and there needs to be a coordinated approach among all these three. Otherwise, sometimes people will make efforts, but the impact will not be that much. So all three have to come together and have a coordinated approach for that.
Okay, very interesting, Mr. Kara.
Yeah, I think my of course, this forum is, we wish that we'll definitely keep repeating it, at a defined frequency. We'll make sure that the ball doesn't get dropped, and there is a continuity of discussion. On the whole discussion piece, one thing that I believe, and that's what I always say, that we should not wait for the ideal solution in the world. Like whether it is a battery problem, or whether it is the module problem, or whether it is the debate that is it heavy mobility, will the solution for heavy mobility, will it be hydrogen, green hydrogen, or stronger, bigger batteries? We should not wait for those solutions, just start the journey, because those answers do not exist. And those answers will keep changing, because the technology is changing so fast. Nobody knows today we are putting billions of dollars behind green hydrogen. Take my word, 5 years down the line, maybe somebody will stand up and say that green hydrogen is the story of the past. There is something new now. But it doesn't mean that you don't walk that journey. So I think walk that journey. Don't stop. Money is there, finance is there, everything is around, and leverage digital to the best. That is one point very important.
Okay, great. Please, you go ahead as well.
No, absolutely. I mean, the more we talk about this, and I think we need to talk to many people, right, at all levels. I think even since this is a forum for private sector, I think, and it was spoken also in the opening talk. I mean, at all levels, right, you just have to embed these conversations so that they are mainstream, and that's when we will actually get to the scale that we want.
No, that's been very interesting. And as you said, it has to happen with everyone's input coming in there, because it's not going to be very easy. But gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your inputs, because it's really important to have this conversation. It's the need of the hour. So with that, I would like to thank all of you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for such an engaging discussion. When we talk about establishing a greener earth, looking out for future generations, we start associating it with compromise. Saving the planet seems feasible, but only when we sacrifice our needs. One would believe that a business can either be sustainable or profitable. Well, contrary to this, a recent study by Oxford Economics and SAP has revealed that 62% of companies in India believe that it is possible to be profitable and sustainable at the same time. And to throw more light on this, I would request Sonal to conduct this session on sustainability as a business opportunity. I would also like to invite her fellow panelists on stage, please. Please join me in welcoming Kapil Singla, CFO, SR Power. Let's welcome them with a huge round of applause. Dr. Sumit D. Chaudhary, founder and president, Green Earth X, and founder and MD, Gaia. Ravneet Maan, Head of Strategy and Policy at Stride Ventures. George Benizet, Advisor Sustainability, Godrej & Boyce. Sameer Shah, Managing Partner, Peak Ventures. And I would also like to request Raman Kalra to please come back on stage for this. Over to you, Sonal.
Welcome back. Thank you, Swati. Well, the sustainability transition presents a chance for businesses to rethink their core processes, not only to reduce environmental impact, but improve efficiency and profits as well. How businesses navigate the different opportunities will define their success in this new age of sustainable business. To discuss sustainability as a business opportunity, we have some of the most prominent boardroom leaders present here today with us. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. It's going to be very interesting, because while we are talking about this transition, does it become a business opportunity? Because we have to face it. The reality of the world is people are running businesses. So how does this transition become an opportunity? Lady, let me start with you, because one of the bigger aspects of running a business is finance, of course. So we are looking at investments coming in there, but these investments are different. So how are businesses looking at it? How are firms looking at it who are investing in sustainable businesses?
I think that's a very pertinent question. And before I get into that, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Ravneet Maan. I head strategy and policy at Stride Ventures. Stride, as a platform, is the largest financing platform for startups in the country by virtue of our two entities, Stride Ventures, which is a venture debt fund, that's the venture debt arm, and Stride One, which is a regulated NBFC. But through this, how we do it on balance sheet funding as well as off balance sheet funding, the idea is to buffer startups from a capital perspective, whether it be just financial capital, the question very pertinent that you asked, as well as other support that we can provide, whether it be in terms of expertise, management expertise, and other things that we can bring into the process. When you come to climate finance, and I think that's really what you're asking for, and the way we're viewing it, I think it's important to understand that the government or the public sector cannot go it alone. It needs to be a blended finance approach. And when I say blended, I mean both ways, public as well as private sector. You need junior capital. You need the public sector to come in to provide that level of comfort for the private sector to come in through by virtue of first loss, investments or performance, first loss investments or performance guarantees, or even in blended in terms of equity as well as debt. And that's where we're really coming in to ensure that founders of these new innovative technologies are not really facing the risk of down rounds and founder equity dilution. And from that perspective, I feel Stride is playing a fairly crucial role, and we've been very cognizant of the fact that funds such as ours play a very critical role in promoting innovation in this space. And the gentleman on the panel before me was talking of the valley of death. And I think that's a very, very, major concern. And to ensure that a lot of these entities are able to reach that level of commercialization, they need adequate support, not just in terms of, financial capital, but a lot of other measures as well. And that's where entities such as us also come in. And we're really valuing that in terms of what we are seeing, in the companies that we are evaluating. We've built a strong climate focus. Within that, EV has taken, a front seat. We have a lot of exposure in that space, across the value chain, whether it be in terms of, mobility through BlueSmart. If you were mentioning 2 e-rickshaws, 5 million of them running in India, changing 2 batteries in a year. That's a lot of batteries, EV batteries that are getting used up. So we're looking at recycling in that space as well. And Loham, for example, is again a portfolio company. Now, the idea is not to talk about a portfolio company, but to tell you that we're aware that it takes a lot of commitment from funds such as ours in promoting innovative technologies. And for that, you're going to need, innovative financing solutions that can underpin this innovation. And we're recognizing the role we play in that and, trying to be a front runner, so to speak.
Okay, that's great to know that there's so much happening here. Mr. Shah, I want to continue on that and build up on that as well. When companies, or I would say people who finance such ventures are looking at an investment perspective, the sustainable investment, what are some of the key things that you think are important before you invest in such places?
Sure. So I think when we look at investments in sustainability, there are 2 key lenses that we use. First is the investment has to provide what is a good risk-adjusted return, because these have to be commercial investments. But equally important is a sustainability lens in terms of saying, does it contribute towards positive externalities? Is it saving carbon emissions? Is it saving water? Is it contributing to what I would call a sustainable future? So these are the key criteria that we use at a very preliminary level. But as we go deeper, I think what one would realize as you look at sustainability is all these areas are connected. What you do in energy impacts water. What you do in food systems impacts water. What you do in water impacts climate. So the interconnection and the understanding, if you will, the nuanced understanding of these sectors is critical to make an investment judgment. The second thing is that you have to look at scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. You have to look at the full value chain, or what I would call the full costing. Otherwise, what would happen in a very simplistic example is that a company which has its own coal-fired plant and a company that uses electricity, the 2 will give different GHG emissions, but that's incorrect because obviously the one that is using electricity, somewhere on the chain, you're having coal burning. So I think the measure has to be sort of the one that looks at it the right way. The third thing we look at is that, the companies at Series A level are at a very early stage, it's later than the startup, but it's like still at the early stage. I think it's almost like you have to imagine the future to say, look, if this succeeds, what kind of impact can it have on the world? What kind of impact can it have on sustainability goals? And if the answer to that is substantial, then you start looking at it. We are not looking at solving problems for 5 people. We are looking at solving problems for, hopefully 50 million, hopefully 5 billion people. Some of the examples, and not to get into too many details, but are addressing issues in water, addressing issues in energy. One of our solar companies is likely to go public in the next few months, and they are the largest manufacturer of panels today outside of China. So India is creating scale. We have another company which does software, which is, I think, going to Raman's point, that look, We have a company that the software is used in over 100 countries to optimize solar panels. So these are, I think, examples of how scale can be achieved, how the climate problem can be addressed. And one shouldn't get caught up in these trillion numbers. I mean, it's like the old saying that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. Just get going. I mean, otherwise, if you worry that there are $3 trillion and we don't have, so let's sit at home and do nothing, is not the answer. It's like with the resources that one has, what's the most efficient way to address the problem? And that's how we are thinking. We would like to have $1 billion to invest, but we don't. The money we have to invest effectively as a fund to achieve the best possible objective. I think that's how I would think about it.
No, that makes point. And that's exactly what you were saying in the last panel as well, Mr. Kalra, right? You just have to start. You can't really be waiting for something to happen. So that takes me to the next question. I would like to pose it to a number of you, actually. Let me start with you, Mr. Kalra. Are businesses looking at sustainability as a cost, or are they looking at it as a revenue driver? What's really happening on ground?
Yeah, I think I did cover this in the previous discussion, that there is clearly a gap between the cost and the revenue part of it. But Samir, you made me think of the third dimension now. That is it a cost or a profit or a growth enabler, or could it be a complete disruptor? Now that's where the magic, that's where the fun lies. And picking up the same industry to have a continuity of discussion, we were talking about putting in billions of dollars on renewable energy, new incremental power plants and capacities, because the demand is increasing in India. We are a growing economy. Now, all of us, or most of us, would have seen those science fiction movies, at some point in time where you are in a controlled environment, looking out of a glass wall, and everything outside is deserted and rusted, and power plants pe ped uge hue hain, etc. Right? Now, digital and the way the things can possibly change. Imagine, create a visionary image in your mind that we are at Juhu right now, that every building in Juhu has a facade which is a solar facade. Every car, or let's say maybe 50% of the cars, are EVs, which are plugged into the grid for a two-way.
And
Today
there's no
it is only
traffic.
one way. Sorry?
And there's no traffic in Bombay. We are imagining that as well, along with everything that you're saying.
Yeah. No, but think about it. Those half the cars are plugged into the grid, and there are a lot of rooftop solars on top of it. Then Juhu might be a self-sustaining grid in itself. Juhu doesn't need to draw power from the grid. And then you explode that, zoom out, and imagine tens, hundreds, thousands, millions of such self-sustaining microgrids. Then why do you need power plants? Think about it. It's a little hypothetical thing, but it's not a 0-1. So the point I'm trying to make is that the whole reality, which is not too far, maybe just about a few years down the line, will make it happen, where the microgrids will become so prevalent and digital will be so integrated on that you might suddenly, maybe 5 years down the line in a similar forum, we might be talking that, oh, by the way, we thought we need $3 trillion for new plants, but we don't need new plants anymore, right? So coming back to your questions, the third point is that could sustainability be a thinking at the board to disrupt the way the world has been living? And that's where the fun again lies. The profit will follow automatically. So it should not be a cost.
Mr. Singla, you are in the power business. I have to ask you this. If there are microgrids running in Juhu and Bandra like that, what happens to power plants?
Thank you, Sonal. So number one is if you see whether it's a cost or growth. So if you see last 2 decades, there has been sea change in the scenarios of the power sector and all. Like 20 years back, it all used to be thermal power, then slowly hydropower came in, and now there are no new thermal power plants coming in the country. So it's either solar energy or wind energy or that sort of plants. But for a growth, like you told, whether it's a cost or a growth, for any growth you need to incur some cost. So that cost has to be incurred. Even then the solar plant, even if maybe more costly, but today investors are looking for green funding. So nowadays grey funding is not there. Whether you go for coal funding or thermal funding, most of the banks or lenders, they take a back seat. So the stakeholders with the investors also prefer to go for a green funding So cost is there, but the cost of funds is also low. So if you're going for a growth, the growth have a cost, but the cost of funds are also low. So it's not an option. It's mandatory in nowadays to go for ESG and to incur that cost to survive in the future, in the long run.
Okay, no, point taken, because every business starts with some cost. So this would be the sustainable businesses starting from there. Dr. Chaudhary, let me take this forward, because we are talking about continuous innovation, we are talking about creativity, we are talking about disruption that could be happening. But does it mean that a basic principle could be applied across industries? Would it be one size fits all, or would we need different technologies, different solutions for every industry? And that is something that needs more thought.
To take up, to answer your specific question, there will be different technologies for different industries. I mean, I fundamentally believe that sustainability, this panel is about sustainability being the business. Yeah. Can you make a business out of sustainability? And when we started Green Earth Exchange, actually we started off in the green hydrogen space. So this is not about green hydrogen, but we have another company called Hydrene, which started building 250 megawatt plants in India right now, green hydrogen plants. But as we started doing it, we realized that we don't know who's going to be the buyer. There is no offtake agreement for anybody in the industry. We are not finding offtake agreement. So we realized that green hydrogen is sustainable, but the price at which people are willing to buy, it's not available. The buyers are not available. So we went to the drawing board to say, can I make this a business by itself? So we came up with the idea that we need the Amazon of green hydrogen. We need to create a marketplace such that all buyers and all sellers come there. Earlier, before Amazon was there, it was very difficult for anybody to justify the shipping of a book from one place to the other place. Amazon came and created such a scale that it became almost negligible cost to ship a book, and people started buying things. And then it's not just books, then Amazon went and started doing that in every industry. So when you create a marketplace, marketplace was the technology, it applied to all the businesses, suddenly became sustainable for e-commerce because they created volume that justified shipping a fridge to shipping a TV to shipping a book. And now you can pay $30 in the US or what, I don't know what the Amazon Prime number is in India, but you'll be able to get all your shipping for free. But shipping each one of them is a cost which nobody can bear by themselves, but the volume made it affordable for everybody. So if you take a look at many businesses today, if we can somehow figure out a way to aggregate volume onto a platform, a lot of the costs are going to go down dramatically. This is what the government is doing when they said that SECI is going to come and subsidize the electrolyzer market. They said that produce so much electrolyzer that the cost of each electrolyzer goes down. They did that with the EV market. They said produce so much of EV cars, and they said that the cost of the EV will go down. Smart meters, I mean, you are in the smart metering business. When they came and said 15 million smart meters will be contracted by the government, they increased the volume to a level that smart metering went down to 3,000 rupees, or even less, right? Installed 3,000 rupees. Now, if you take a look at this concept of a technology construct called volume and marketplaces is bringing down the cost and therefore affordability. Sustainability doesn't need to cost anymore. It can be a business by itself. If you take the volume up to a level that it is now affordable for everybody. And that is what we started doing in Green Earth. And we said we are not going to do it in India because sustainability is not a local problem over here. Pollution is not a local problem in India alone. There is actually more pollutants in the US and in Europe than here in India, but they can't, we might be able to produce that sustainable solution over here. So there needs to be a marketplace that somebody who's polluting in the US can actually leverage the solutions that are there in India. Japan can't produce any green energy. They need to buy it from Europe, they need to buy it from Africa, they need to buy it from India. They are doing those deals, but there is no marketplace for it. And as soon as you change the volume, shipping costs are going to go down. So you can produce green hydrogen or green ammonia in India and ship it to Brazil. And it will still be as cheap as gray hydrogen or gray ammonia. So you need to create sustainability as a business through volume, through marketplaces such that gray is as cost effective as green, and therefore green is going to be
norm.
preferred.
Yeah, becomes the
Green
norm.
will be preferred if two people are selling the same product. One is green and one is not green at the same price. I can bet you that the world will choose green.
No, just to add, when you spoke about marketplace, I would like to add one more time. Like when powers are sold, so there is a power exchange. So power are sold on the exchange where you don't have a tie-up power. So the surplus power generated by the power plants are sold and discoms generally buy it. Nowadays, government has already promoted that there is a green exchange, GDAM, Green Day Ahead Market, where only green powers are sold. That is exclusively for solar and wind, for the green power, not for thermal. And there you get much better rates and you get carbon discounts also over that.
Better PPA
So a
than you would
separate
buy on a one-on-one.
place is already developed in the last 1 year by the government of India for the green power trading.
Okay, that's very interesting.
If I could just, extrapolate what you're saying, making sustainability, a business model in itself, I think you've got it, spot on, because everyone is viewing it from the lens of a compliance cost. And I've heard the word cost umpteen times. You need to convert it to a competitive advantage. Then you need to monetize that competitive advantage. And that is going to happen at scale. So when you said you're selling two products, both are at the same price, but one is green, it's but given who's going to go for which product. But right now, in a lot of scenarios, they are not at par.
Yeah.
There is a cost difference, and that needs to be factored in. And I do not think subsidies could be the only way. Providing that impetus to enable businesses to reach that level of scale. I'll give you an example. We've invested in a last mile, delivery provider, which has a completely electric fleet, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers. Unit economics will work out at a certain scale, and they're going to be profitable. We've got that sorted out. But it's about getting them to that level of scale, post which they are going to be so much more cost competitive than the normal ICE vehicles. But it's just that initial capex and the charging infra that you need to, recover over a period of time. And that's where the role of, cost-effective financing really comes into play. So I think you've really got it spot on in terms of achieving that size and scale. And only through that can you really ensure. And another thing, a byproduct of this is then generating carbon credits, since you were talking of markets. But then the issue over there is, especially for EVs, for example, right now in India, it's voluntary carbon markets. So in fact, the only two Vera certified companies in the country that are registered, that are accredited to issue carbon credits, are both our portfolio companies. But do I have a visibility into what the price of that credit is going to be? Just ensuring certain level of standards over there for the want of a, proper taxonomy. I think those are also questions that probably need to be addressed.
So we are trying to do that in the hydrogen space, not looking at it from a carbon credit market, but green hydrogen needs to be certified. What is green? Every country is coming up with a different definition of what is green. So therefore, it is going to be a tricky problem to solve at a global level, because we are going to launch in 6 geographies: the US, Europe, Africa, India, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Japan. So we are going to launch our exchange in 6 countries together with certification in all of these geographies, with normalization of these definitions across all of these geographies. So somebody sitting in Japan will know exactly the percentage of green that he's buying in Brazil, and being able to ship it on a fossil fuel powered ship.
Ammonia.
Now, we are finding the biggest demand is coming from the maritime
so they are talking about green LNG, they are talking about green shipping. That's one of the things everyone's focusing on. And about credits, government has come out with the green credits program. Let's see how it's regulated, because globally, again, voluntary carbon credits and the mechanism does come with its pros and cons. So that's, of course, something that we need to work on as well. Mr. Menezes, thank you so much for patiently waiting. I have a question for you, because you told me earlier that, you've been into business, you've taken care as a CEO there, you've been involved in day-to-day activities, and sustainability was your passion, and that's how you were roped into this role. As a business leader, are leaders right now looking at reforming the current business, or they have to look at getting into a new business to see this transition happening? Can they make changes in the existing business, or do they have to start from scratch to ensure that this transition happens at a faster pace?
I think the short answer to that, I think there is no either or. I think you need to keep all your options open. I think, let me go back to the fundamental question. This thinking on sustainability, to my mind, I think it has to flow from the larger purpose of the organization. It has to be embedded in your purpose. I represent Godrej and Boyce, and we have been very fortunate to have Mr. Godrej, who himself has been a luminary in this space. He's, active in so many climate organizations world over, even in India as well as abroad. So we had that benefit. So for us, this journey has started not today, many decades back actually. And as a result of that, I think it has kind of fully got embedded into the organization. And I'll just give you an example. When we are trying to drive the green agenda, we actually launched something known as a good and green umbrella initiative across the company. So do things which are good for society and green for the environment, as simply as that. And under that, we actually draw three silos, and we are a manufacturing organization. So how do you green manufacturing and operations? Was a clear, thrust area. And then you get into so many issues with respect to manufacturing. It's energy, it is waste, it is water, it is recyclability. It is in product design, because resource efficiency becomes a very important dimension. How do you drive resource efficiency? The planet has finite resources. So do you take that into account while designing your products? Very rarely would a designer look at planetary boundaries. It is very, very important to not lose sight of that. So this in fact has been one of the ethos which drives our product design. Talking of community, I mean, it's not only about the moral and ethical dimension of building communities where you operate, but really doing things which create that goodness in society. And then it comes back to you. So as organization, we have a fiduciary role. So people trust us. So how do you really, do things which are right? So this is something which wherever we are operating our factories, so this is how we build the communities in and around. And, now corporate accountability has become a big thing actually. And, so people are talking of transparency in reporting and all that. But to my mind, I think, an organization which believes in this ethos will anyway do these things irrespective of whether, regulations warrant it or not. So I think, for us actually, this is something which we started long back and we have seen great results. I mean, just give a number actually. 10 years back when we got onto the energy bandwagon, we said we will improve our energy productivity by 100% over a decade. And lo and behold, we did that. And now we are setting an equivalent stretch ahead. But, having said all this, I think it's also important to recognize that the ground level realities are very different. My colleagues are from the power sector. They spoke about all that is happening. I'll tell you, one of the challenges for the industry, we want to transit to greener energy. But all policies restrain you from adopting green energy. For example, the open access policies are not enabling. There are so many ifs and buts. And I'll tell you, when we signed the first power purchase agreement for green power, there was what would I say, a very encouraging, benefit on the bottom line. So if grid power was X, through the power purchase agreement, it would have been X minus 3 rupees. So, so if I'm saving 3 rupees on every unit, it was a no-brainer. Just go and sign this agreement. We went and signed the agreement for 25 years. And lo and behold, after 7-8 years, the policy changes went the other way around, and instead of saving 3 rupees, we started losing 1.5 rupees. Now, these are the realities. But despite that, I think, there is an increasing recognition also, among the regulators and the government that this needs to be addressed. Because the fact of the matter is, the paying power is a subsidized, what would I say, resource in our country. And paying consumers, nobody wants to let them go. If they were to set up their own private grids, the utility doesn't want to let them go. So these are the issues actually. So I think we need a very, very evolved and mature leadership to drive this agenda. And that's the way this happen. And business models fall in place. In fact, for us, a lot of things which we're doing, we have built also, while we began this journey because of a deep belief and commitment, over a period of time also our business models have evolved. And I'll just give an example. We have a division which is into construction. we make construction blocks, those, construction from recycled concrete. So concrete debris which goes to dumping yards, actually we use it to make products. And that is how you build business model. So to my mind, I think this is something which opens up huge vistas for everyone, and we must leverage it.
Okay. Mr. Shah, that takes me to the question of manpower. If it's driven by leadership, it will be driven by employees as well, right? Do we need, or are companies at the top looking at upskilling current employees? Are we looking at getting employees from outside? How does the manpower change in this scenario? Because the transition would require a lot of science. It would not be that easy.
Sure. I think it's a bit of both. I mean, you need to train the existing manpower because theoretically you can't replace 100% of the people. But at the same time, you also need a catalyst. And in general, if the catalyst comes at the top, where you have, as George was saying, a very enlightened management at the top, then change is driven at the top. Because I think one thing people forget is that the design phase of a product, you spend perhaps only 10%, but you commit 90% of the costs at that time. Once the design is done, 90% of the costs get committed. So if at the board level, sustainability is driving resource efficiency and how you actually build products, that will filter down the organization. At the same time, I think awareness is crucial. I mean, it's one of those comments where awareness comes from the top, but has to percolate throughout the organization. Because you can't have a change in the boardroom not reflected, throughout the organization. And that's a challenge and an opportunity. I think there are many ways companies have done it. And it can be a combination of sort of training programs, a combination of sort of incentives. I think there's a company I know which says, look, if you save on your carbon, they have an app which calculates the employee's travel carbon footprint. Very small measure. I mean, one can say, look, what does one person's travel savings do? It changes a mindset. I think what is important is to cultivate a mindset of sustainability. How do I, in everything that I do, whether at work, at home, can I save energy? I mean, we talk about clean energy. I think the comment made in clean energy is that the cleanest form of the energy is the energy you don't use. So the point is avoid, mitigate, recompensate, which are the principles laid down by IFC, is the way to go. So employees have to learn that. I mean, there are some parts of it where training can be offered, and now there are online external organizations that offer that as well. But I think awareness is absolutely a starting point, but it's like, if you have a diagnosis, but you don't do anything about it, it fails. So awareness has to be backed by actions, and that can be a combination of sort of creating carrots, creating issues where you say, look, as George was mentioning, I think there are targets to say, look, we have to reduce usage of fossil fuels by 100%. Once you have a target that is set, then the organization rallies towards it. But at the same time, these targets cannot be complex. It has to be understood by the average person working in the organization to say, look, there is an incentive to meet this target. It's simple enough. I can relate to it. I can associate with it. I can back it because obviously improved climate change benefits him as an individual as well as an employee. These are not disconnected. I think those kind of progressive sort of thoughts have to be sort of led, but leadership from the top goes a long way in addressing these issues.
Is that one of the things that you look at while looking at investments, sustainable investments?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Just to add on what Mr. Shah told on the manpower that you need to train and all. So once you train the manpower, the cost again comes into. So there is small one-liner on that. Once a new recruit was there, the CEO told that we need to impart training to this new person to have that known to the systems and other things. He will be developed. So the CFO, like me, told what will happen. There is a cost involved, and if he leaves after the training, so CEO told. And what happens if he doesn't leave?
Correct. I think efficiency has to be built into the systems. I think efficiency is a starting point, and that can be beginning with energy efficiency, but it has to reflect in water efficiency, just broadly resource efficiency as well, in terms of how do you use lower resources to achieve the same end output, actually.
Yes,
I
please.
had a point to your, this panel is again about making sustainability the business, right?
Yeah.
So you talked about 8 years of subsidy that you got by paying 3 rupees less. If you did think about it as that, and you said that you invested 3 rupees for 8 years, after that you should be able to pay 1.5 rupees for the next 30 years, and that is the business. We considered it to be subsidy and we took it out of the system as profit and we gave it to all our shareholders and that is gone. After that, you can't pay the 1.5 for the rest of your life. So how we look at subsidies that are coming in, how do we bank on that subsidy and later on create a cash flow out of that subsidy that came in is going to determine whether we are going to be able to get sustainability as a business or is it going to be a cost all the time. It is going to look like a cost to you at 1.5, but it would not have been a cost if we had considered it to be an investment of the first 8 years as investment that the government gave to you. The same way we are looking at it in the hydrogen space today. The government is saying, for 30 years, I'm not going to charge you wheeling charges. Right? I can call it a cost and take it out of the business, or I can call it an investment which will allow me to produce hydrogen, green hydrogen at the cost of gray hydrogen, be able to sell it at a cost, anything will sell. We know that, right? If I can price my green hydrogen at the same price as gray hydrogen, it will be bought. ROI will be, instead of 3 years, it will be 7 years. That's a business, still a valid business if we can get a ROI out of 7 years. Maybe not 7, maybe 10, but still it is going to be a business which is profitable. Provided I considered the first 30 years of investment as investment and not as a cost. And so making it a business is a mindset. We just have to look at different costs differently.
Well, Mr. Kalra, you had a point to make there.
No, I was just extending the point that he was making, Sameer. It is a lot to do with everybody has to passionately accept it. Now, there's a common saying that you either change a behavior by carrot or by commitment, right? Now, whether it is enterprises, from an enterprise perspective, if you are into the business of making products for enterprise, for B2B, if that is your business, you got to really see it from an existential crisis point of view. Because it's a matter of time, 2 years down the line, the regulations in Europe will not allow your buyers to import from you if you are not green. So the whole debate, whether it is a cost or a profit, will fizzle out because you will have nobody to sell to, right? So that is from an enterprise business perspective. And likewise, from an individual point of view, imagine a situation where, like, let's say Aadhaar card we spoke about, right? Now, again, I like to visualize situations. Like, so imagine maybe 3 years down the line or 4 years down the line, your digitally connected chip on Aadhaar card is a real-time lever of your green index. It will say that, Sonal, you are 49% green, and maybe Sameer, this month you were 65% green, right? It will tap your behavior, it will tap your buying patterns, it will tap the kind of products that you buy, of course, given the data privacy and all. But the point is that, people will start taking proud in saying, as an individual, that I'm green, There are airports in India which are going out of their necessitated mandate and saying that, how do I influence people's behavior home to home? So home to home journey, and you traverse through the airport, you check in, you sit at the lounge, you do some shopping, you eat something. So whether you're buying a chicken burger or a plant-based burger, whether you're buying a fast fashion product or you're buying a recycled fabric product, which airlines are you flying in terms of carbon footprint point of view? You came from home to airport by a green electric car or a normal diesel car. So everything can get mapped. So I think there is a lot happening on inculcating that behavior, that change, and that will automatically lead to then skills. People will start understanding it, and that will answer the bigger question that you raised, that do we need a skill training or do we need something else? I think it becomes a part of life. soon.
I'll just add on to your visualization. I won't be surprised if Meta comes with a social app saying that, oh, Sonal's 49% green, Mr. Kalra is 65% green, let's get him more likes. And then there'll be more likes on your profiles, and then people will just do that to get more likes.
What happens when elections happen in India? People start posting on Facebook, that inked finger that I have voted, have you voted? Similarly, people put on their Insta that, I am green, are you green?
It's a mindset, as you were pointing out as well, right? Mr. Menzies, because you are focusing on consumers as well, it's a B2B business, a bigger part of your portfolio. Does it change the brand identity? Does it change the way consumer experiences your product? Is that something, a trend that you're seeing?
Oh, see, today's consumers are also, I would say, pretty evolved. They're informed, they are knowledgeable, they are conscientious. So if you differentiate vis-a-vis your competitors, it's bound to get you that traction. I'll give you an example actually. In the appliances industry, by now everyone has moved away from ozone depleting substances.
Yeah.
But we were the very first brand which we did not today. In fact, we were the pioneers in the country at least, and that gave us a huge traction. In fact, when the government of India launched the star labeling program, we could get almost all our appliances under that star rating because we had that head start. And that is something, because and consumers patronize us for that. So today I think consumers, when they see merit in what you do, it's something which helps your brand actually. And we've been seeing this in almost in all the product lines. So wherever you are able to get this messaging across, I gave the example of those construction debris used in a construction bricks. Now that is something which a lot of consumers appreciate. Because if it is a win-win in terms of the value it creates for the environment and for the consumers, then it's a winner, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't have much time, but I do have a question for you. Yeah, please go ahead.
I wanted to pitch in, because what you were referring to about don't consider it as a profit and deploy it back, right? Are you able to? You were talking of culture flowing from the top and how does it percolate down? I think something that could link the two of them is being able to measure and monitor that impact, and not ex post, but preempted, and that would be a driver for both change in culture as well as relooking at those subsidies that you're getting. And I think that is a topic that we probably haven't touched upon. And unfortunately, we're short on time, but I think that's a session in itself altogether for your next forum.
No, absolutely. Actually, I was just going to say that had more questions, but unfortunately, we are out of time. But gentlemen and lady, it was such a pleasure speaking with all of you. Loved the opinions and the debates that we had around calling sustainability as a business opportunity. It'll always be a debate, but more power to everyone. You are working towards this, and let's have a greener future where everyone is 100% green. That's what our Aadhaar should be saying. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for such an informative discussion. Moving on, we have another engaging panel discussion on ESG reporting, boon or bane. Now, a very pivotal aspect of sustainability in finance and business has been ESG, or environmental, social and government reporting as we call it. India's landscape has evolved over the years, and the ESG landscape, however, in its recent update has come from SEBI in the form of the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report, according to which businesses have to submit reports centered around specific key responsibility areas. Well, ESG compliance does come with its own perks, and to elaborate on the same, I will request Sonal to please conduct this session as well, and I would also like to invite her fellow panelists on stage. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Pradeep Panigrahi, Head Corporate Sustainability, Larsen & Toubro. Let's please welcome everyone with a round of applause. Jignesh Sharda, Head of Sustainability at CEAT. Navdeep Singh Mehram, Head CSR and Sustainability, Diageo India. Sridhar Sarthi, Chief Ethics Officer and Head, Sustainability and CSR, Tata Capital; PC Jain, BU Unit Head, Technical Center, Tata Autocom Systems Limited; and Arun Biswas. I would request you to please join us back on stage.
Thank you so much for that. Well, ESG reporting began as a voluntary practice, which has over the years evolved into a key part of business investment outlook. Now, sustainability heads at India's biggest companies must decide how this essential requirement fits into their larger framework of sustainable planning and impact assessment. Tonight, we'll also discuss how it will shape the sustainability transition and consumer perceptions in times to come. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us here. Mr. Biswas, let me start with you, because while we are talking about the biggest priority being sustainability for most of the CEOs, I just wanted to understand how can business leaders actually leverage ESG data better and use it as a tool for innovation and growth as well?
I think the first thing to understand is that ESG data drives transparency. That transparency can then be used for better customer engagement. It can be used to uncover opportunities within the business. To give you a couple of examples, we were working with an EPC company, and they are into asset management and all kinds of large construction projects and so on. So we started working with their sustainability data and putting in a sustainability tool. That same data was then used to drive more asset efficiency, which reduced cost and generated profitability. They were into making train coaches. That same data was then used to improve reliability of trains, which gave them a better customer experience. Same data, giving you sustainability, giving you profitability, and better customer experience.
Okay, so those examples are also very important, right? How it's practically happening. Let me come to you, sir, because we've been talking about a lot of investors looking at it as well. There are new regulatory standards coming in. How are you looking at the business responsibility and sustainability report? Is this the measurements right now, are they enough, or do you suggest some policy changes to that as well?
So this reporting context has evolved a lot, and I think investors are ahead of the curve in terms of their demand. So regulation comes, but investors ask for more, and they keep on demanding more. And thankfully for Diageo, globally we are very, very well knitted with our investor community. We run regular investor surveys. We run Capital Market Day. It's coming next month. And then coming back to India, United Spirits Limited, which is a listed company here. Also, we are very well connected with our investors. Now, investors are looking at 2-3 different aspects of ESG. One, as in the previous discussions, we discussed that how much is the commitment at board level, because we all know boardrooms are black boxes. Nobody knows what is being discussed over there. So what are those black boxes discussing? Where is the commitment being placed, and is it balanced on E, S, and G, or is it only skewed towards E? And governance, especially for a beverage alcohol sector, is a very, very critical aspect to be looked into, to be talked about, and to be disclosed, because we are discussing disclosures here today. The second aspect which the investors are now very, very, let's say, seriously monitoring is how independent ESG rating agencies are rating even Indian listed companies. 2 years ago, we were surprised that we are a subsidiary of a PLC company, and all the rating of our PLC were fabulous. And when we looked into United Spirits ratings, they were not. And it was a big surprise for our boardroom. And when we realized that what is the gap, they were referring to rating agencies were referring to the global ESG reports, and they were not looking into our annual reports. And our annual reports were very boring at that time. So then we decided that let's independently start reporting against the requirements which the rating agencies are looking at. So GRI standard, SASB standard, which is sector-specific standard, UNGC principles. So we looked into that, started our independent ESG reporting index last year. This year we again published. And last week we had our CFO meet one of the investors. They actually started drawing trend from last 2 reports. Aap kitna pani use kar rahe ho? what is your thermal energy, what is your electrical energy. So they are starting looking at that. So investors are looking rating agencies, and within rating agency also there are three segments. One, MSCI Sustainalytics, which picks up data which is published, CDP, DGSI, and then now we have AI-based solutions, which is almost real time. So yes, I think investors are ahead of the curve, and we have to catch up on that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. There's a lot of activism awareness as well. Mr. Shada, let me come to you. As he was mentioning, it's a listed company, United Spirits. That does come with a lot of other responsibilities. It's a lot of compliance. In that case, how are you looking at the ESG framework? Would you want some, from a company level or a group level, some of the changes in the BSR reporting, or do you think what are the current policies are good enough for disclosures?
No, I think so. CEAT Limited is a part of RPG Group. Of course, many of our companies are listed companies. And in fact, this is our fourth year of integrated reporting, which is, we already published our BRSR report this year. And since 2020, we have been doing our integrated annual report. What we believe is that this, if we have the right intent and the right mindset, it is the right way to publish the data, become transparent, and be accountable to our shareholders and stakeholders. So, but this space is evolving. As the gentleman just said, that a lot of these also requires, it's in the transition phase in terms of understanding what are the right metrics. Are we measuring in the right way? A lot of the times, what happens is that there are many standards of factors which you can use to convert your data, as one of the panelists said, into scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. And some of them would like to disclose the standards they use, but many of them don't. So even comparing your peers, it becomes very hard to know what is happening. So I think that kind of transition is still required, where the BRSR can further evolve to create a further standardized, not only on the principles, but also on the way you measure and way you report. So, A, yes, it is must, and B, it is in transition, so a lot needs to still happen for it to become more effective.
Okay, so measurement is something that everyone has, agreed upon as well. Let me come to you because, every company has a different metric. Manufacturing companies would be looking at it differently. A technology company would be looking at it differently. From an automotive perspective, how do you look at ESG reporting? What would some of the ideas, why would it be important for them to be going ahead with it?
Yeah, thanks. So coming to the background of automotive, right, there's a lot of disruption happening currently in this automotive field. We looked at ICE, we are looking at electric, we are going to see fossil fuels coming in, we are going to see fuel cells, we are going to see hydrogen. So a lot of transformation is happening as we speak. Now this is going to create a very clear, I would say even a barrier, because people have yet to adapt on what are these growth. There needs to be data generated. The whole thing about ESG is data. How do we get the data? Where do we make people learn the data? How do we educate the ecosystem? So these are very fundamental principal challenges which are going into manufacturers like us. I've come from a background of auto industry with 30 years in this field. So, the earlier days when we started, we did some sort of, energy, right? Everybody thought about weight reduction. People went with sustainable materials, natural fibers. A lot of raw inputs were taken in the past. But does that mean ESG? Or was the thought process there in carbon footprint? Yes. The thought was there 20 years before, 30 years before in this industry. But as we see now, the technology is moving rapidly, innovation is happening. So now the whole, the trend which has scoped up over the industry is now shaping into manufacturing solutions. So now we can see more and more output. We could look at, the engineering drawings. I saw the requirement, which came out very clearly that the cost of sustainability is inbuilt in the design. 10% of the design, which accounts for 90% of the cost, is really true. Because today when we look at our drawings and we look at our components we manufacture, the cost of material or the cost of sustainable material is inbuilt in it. And 67 or 70% of the cost of a product is the material specification. So the drawing boards needs to look at where we stand, how these specifications can be given. And the second other thing was the supply chain.
Right.
Today, the Amazon example was very good, right? It really proved a reality. Now, what is happening even in the auto industry? You can actually book a car through Amazon. So that's how flexibility the whole system is driving. So, from where I see this whole picture of ESG, there needs to be, it's not like I can get a data tomorrow and publish it and I say, I'm a ESG star company to the boardroom. But the momentum is started, the data needs to come. I think followed by data, it's going to be regulations, it's going to be standards. There's going to be competition, right? There are like 10 players doing the same product. There's going to be a competition. But if we could look at competition in driving a sustainable future, that's where the answer lies in. So standards are going to evolve. These are going to be upcoming areas where I foresee in this industry.
Okay, so interestingly, you said it's going to be the future. So can ESG reports in that case be considered as a proxy for future readiness? Is something that companies are also talking about and investors are investing also talking about?
Well, it's always something to think about. It cannot be considered as a proxy, but surely as we go ahead, it'll be one of the key indicators, like we see reports today, and why do we do this first? And when we go back, it's all about creating the desired impact. When we speak about community engagement, when we speak about stakeholder expectations, we speak about transparency, we speak about trust. I think ESG to a certain extent puts all this together. And when you have as a group, or where both of us belong, responsibility is key, accountability is key, transparency is key, trust is key. And ESG to a certain extent, provided that we report in the manner that is so desired, will give you certain indicators from. As a group, and many of us, I'm sure, as good corporate citizens, it's not about being compliant. It's not about what we report. It's always about exceeding expectations. I think, and that is where when we have a BRSR or the RBI papers on climate risk, etc., I think what are they trying to coerce us to do? It's not about what you don't do, but it's about also making us think as to what we should be doing. And I think we need to be more proactive, be more responsible corporate citizens, and ensure that we deploy it in the manner that is so desired from us. So yeah, to a certain extent, it'll give, if I'm a small company, for example, overnight I cannot be expected to demonstrate, in terms of the ESG metrics that is there. Surely it gives us competitive advantage if you're reporting that, and it does, place you in the eyes of the stakeholders. But I think overall, it will be used later on, but not at the moment as a key metric.
That's very important because, as you mentioned, RBI, they have started saying that climate change should be considered in their estimates, in their, the forecast that they're making. So that is making headways. Let me come to you, sir, because while we are talking about ESG reporting, one of the key functions that a company has to do, what are the key KPIs or metrics that needs to be considered while you are ensuring ESG reporting? What is something that every company should be mindful of?
Absolutely. KPIs are always there. It is there for a long time. We have been reporting since 2008, one of the early mover in this field. And, at L&T, this is taken very seriously. Reporting is taken very seriously. Of course, the performance also at the ground level. It is reviewed at the board level, at ecom level, at CEO level, CFO level. And what is important that the KPIs are there, but some of the things like climate change. On climate change, you have energy efficiency, you have, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emission and all those stuff. Now, these KPIs are there for a long time, but what is happening is there is a lot more visibility in terms of granularity. And as BRSR core, which is mandated from this year for reasonable assurance, I think that will bring out a lot of, nuances of these KPIs. Like, for example, earlier the auditing was done at a simple basis. Today it will be 90-95%, right? And when it goes, and when you do that kind of audit, you will understand everything in the business. Going to the last mile, going to the bottom of the pyramid, you try to you understand everything, and then that gives a lot of clarity to the management, and also it will also improve transparency. So I think today we are talking about a lot about IT, IoT, and so many stuff. So I'll give you a very simple example. 13,000 of our equipments are connected, IoT connected, and that solves the KPIs of diesel consumption. We know real-time basis how much of fuel consumption is there, whether the vehicle is running, what is the running time of the vehicle, when we can switch off, switch on, things like that. It's a massive effort. In fact, it was taken by our current chairman, we call him SNS, and it is a massive drive, and that is changing the KPI space. And today, BRSR core, which is mandated for this year for reasonable assurance, actually is going to change the reporting landscape significantly, because majority of the companies are not prepared, right? Look at, maybe top 100 companies, 150, 200. They're doing it diligently for quite some time. But those who are not prepared and those who are at an early stage, they'll face a lot of challenges. So I only hope that, there's a lot of focus on this, and there is a lot of use of IT, IoTs in understanding KPIs and delivering the real data that is required for reporting.
Okay, that is yes, please, yes, go ahead.
That.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting, let's say, commitment that has come from our CEO and the executive committee is that out of 25 non-financial indicators, which are part of our 2030 action plan, Spirit of Progress Society 2030, out of 25 non-financial indicators, last year, 6 indicators were linked to the long-term incentive plan, the bonus of our CEO globally, as well as in India, and that's part of our ESG disclosures. It has now moved to 12 indicators from 6, and next year it will be 15, and eventually all 25 non-financial indicators. There are goals, there are milestones, there are KPIs. So there is a future-backed lens put to all the KPIs, and every year all of that is monitored on a quarterly basis. And another interesting monitoring mechanism which we have is that in our company we don't have 3 signals. We either have red or green. There is no yellow. So either you have achieved it or you have not achieved it. So there is no ifs and buts about it. And that's all because of one point I wanted to make is that, 2013, when this 2% mandate came, and also a mandate came to set up an independent CSR committee with independent board of directors over there. I was just calculating 10 years now, if 3 meetings every year have happened, 30 board level executive committee meetings have already happened, and they will not leave the KPIs to be loose or the KPIs to be very, very low benchmarked. So every quarter you have to go back and tell them that we are inching ahead. There is a delta adding to our performance, and we are transparent about it. Here is the governance. Here are the evidences. So I think it's a long haul, but I think we are all evolving. But commitment of a long-term incentive plan by the CEO, and then embedding it into the XCOM, then embedding into the cross functions, last mile, which was discussed in the presentation also. I see that happening in front of me, and that's amazing things to basically experience when the CEO puts me on the podium in the town hall. Okay, Navdeep, talk about where we failed and where we succeeded. So I have to actually stand in the town hall and talk about our KPIs, red or green.
That's amazing. Also reminding you of the market screen, listed company like red and green. But no, accountability is very important when you're talking about these changes taking place. Someone here I thought had a point to make. Yes,
add
please.
on to KPI, I mean, from an engineering organization, when we go with sustainable materials, right, the cost of conversion is so high that you really may not make money on the product what you design. But the value which is coming out of that is what a product demands, right? Look at the BS4 to BS6 challenge. I can trust and tell you that people wouldn't have made money in that transition. But what has gone back to the society and where we stand in the globe made the difference. We could meet the requirement, we could meet the regulations, and we could prove what we could do. So, I had KPIs where, you are converting an X material into a Y weight reduction activity, right? I want to challenge 27% weight reduction. It's easy to say, right? But if there is some system developed on a particular weight and standard, and when I want to drive that change, it's not easy. You're putting the, n number of iterations, cost, design, prototype to make sure that you come and accomplish the challenge. So KPIs have been a backbone, and it's not financially, I could say that if I met my KPI, maybe I may not be financially profitable, but I have made the objective of, my end result. So
That's a very interesting point, actually. So, is that, Mr. Biswas, I would come to you. Is that one of the reasons why, there are some of the barriers which prevents companies from reporting ESG? How can we overcome that? Please give me the answer, then I'll come to you on the same one. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think we all talked about data. One of the biggest barriers is just availability of good quality data at the right point in time and so on. And if you examine the data problem, we have not built companies to really gather sustainability data. They have been built to gather financial data. You report cost, you report profit and all that. But the data sets we now require to report on sustainability are far more complex. You need to measure your energy, your emissions, your impact on environment, impact on child labor, whatever, right? These are very, very complex dimensions of data, very difficult to handle, and people are trying to handle such as something is very complex, either manually or through spreadsheets. This is not sustainable. You need to move to what we call an ESG system of record, because this is far more complex than financial accounting. So that's the first piece. That's the first barrier, and to overcome that barrier, you need to approach the right technology. The second dimension, which is the difficulty, is that sustainability forces you to look beyond your organization. You are forced to now look at your entire value chain. But getting data and getting cooperation from your suppliers, from your customers, and to get all of that is difficult. We have to acknowledge it that it's difficult, but that is where we'll have to lean in and get together as an ecosystem to solve that barrier. And again, technology can help. Through digital technology, through blockchain technology, you can have trusted data across the end-to-end ecosystem. The third challenge is regulation itself, because I was counting the number of standards and frameworks which are out there globally, which companies have to report to collectively. I counted 600, right? For any one company, you probably have to report to 30 to 50 different standards. So we have to, bring all those standards into a unified framework. BRSR is a good start in India. ISSB S1, S2 is a good start globally. But again, that's the third area. So these are three key barriers and the ways in which we can overcome it through technology.
Please go ahead.
After hearing him, I'm reminded of a quote: "Sustainable development requires human ingenuity." And people are the key. And so again, I'm an optimist, okay, and maybe that's the way I am. Definitely barriers are there to be overcome, but there are challenges. Surely there are challenges when you look at the value chain, when you look at the ecosystem, when you look at the credibility also of an organization. Here I'm not naming organizations or I'm not naming industries, but you're looked at as an industry which has not been in the eyes as a credible or a good corporate citizen with the stakeholders. Suddenly you're coming and reporting something which says that, here, bingo, here we are, we met the standards. So again, so there are, lot of people or a lot of corporates who are careful, and sometimes that also becomes a barrier. Secondly, there are a lot of these small industries or small scale industries which are also apprehensive about reporting certain data, for the fact that, there may be challenges by the regulator or by the bodies that are concerned. Last but not the least, it's also about the available finance that is there because of what you report, and whether it's an investor, whether me as a lender, whether as a partner. So those could be challenges. I also foresee many of the reporting not being done in a manner that has to be done because of the fact that companies are afraid of, afraid of reporting data because they believe that it may give others the competitive edge, because I've reported the data and therefore, I've given away what I had and, that can be. But at the end of the day, I think it's for improvement. It's not about meeting the requirement. It's about raising the barrier and raising expectations. That's more important. Like you said, the purpose, somebody made a very interesting statement, I think Mr. Shah earlier. If you have a purpose, for example, for us is to be a responsible financial partner, fulfilling India's aspirations. So when you're looking at the nation building, when you're looking at fulfilling aspirations, I think others become secondary. Whether you're meeting the KPIs, whether you have strong KPIs, robust KPIs, becomes, as a group, when we look at what our purpose is to improve the quality of life. Not even before much of these standards were there. It's about community engagement. It's about long-term value creation. So when you look at all this, I think it becomes easier. But in short, those are some of the points that I wanted to make.
No, actually, we shouldn't undermine what humans can really do here, right? It's a lot driven by human resource and what they're doing here. But just another part to it, Mr. Chada, and then I would come to you, Mr. Banigre, as well. Is there still some skepticism around ESG reporting? Do investors trust that? Is that a point which you've been seeing in your investors when you have conversations or with the industry as well?
I think more than skepticism, it may be that whether it is done in the right way. And like as Mr. Arun said, that there are so many frameworks and standards. And now certain investors want to look at it with a certain lens, and maybe if they don't find it in your own report, that's why there is the other part is there. A lot of investor interest also calls for assessments, like we mentioned the MSCI or DJSI or Sustainalytics. So we have seen a lot of investor interest asking us to participate in this. And the point is whether you participate or not, your public data is being used to rate you. So it is better to participate and provide the proper disclosure. So it is also from the flavor of different investors choose different standards and frameworks. And I give a testament to the point you said. The number of groundwork that teams have to do just to fill all these assessments is mind-boggling. I am adding manpower to just comply with the investor requirements and the government requirements rather than add value to the sustainability journey itself. So definitely unification of the framework is important, which the investors as well as the reporting can get on the same platform, so that we can really focus on the value-added work in terms of making a real change.
If I may add,
yes, please.
I think the unification of the reporting systems is very, very key because it gives everybody an even platform. Now we are being rated on different, whether it's SASB or GRI or PRSR, etc. A common platform will actually give us, an even playing field. It's not like somebody running in 100 meters or somebody running at 200 meters, and you being evaluated based on that performance of the timing of that. So I think that's a valid point that he made out there.
Sorry, I just have a follow-up in that, but because it's again standards, right? And different industries have different accounting standards as well. For financials, it's different. For real estate companies, it would be different. For manufacturing, it's different. Of course, manufacturing and other sectors take up most of the similar accounting standards. But do you think we would require industry-wise standards when it comes to ESG reporting? Or do you think it would be one-size-fits-all approach here?
Definitely, one size fits all is not that we are expecting. Surely, because compared to a cement company or a manufacturing company, what's the financial services? There are different KPIs or different indicators, if I may say so. But a common unification of that, if you aggregate that into a common unification, I think that is what would help rate a particular industry or a company. But definitely for an industry, financial services should be one.
Yeah.
For a manufacturing, it should be one. So, but overall, if there is one, I'm sure over the period of time will evolve. And if there is one, I think it will help all of us to be.
Just to add to that, I think it's the materiality in each segment or each sector that will play a major role in adopting the uniform standards. I mean, what is material to extractive sector may not be material to a service sector, may not be a material to telecom sector. So what is it that is material to that particular sector, and how they prioritize engaging with investors, stakeholders, how do they build that prioritization matrix of materiality? I think that would be really helpful.
No, that's right.
Just to add on that point, you know, uh, most of the time when we look at products and products build, you know, we look at a factor called life, right? There is two types of life, right? The end use application and the life of its own product. So nowadays, what is happening? You know, I can add to the material column. You know, there are materials or there are additives which actually look at the life of that particular part, how it can be reused. It's not that life it needs to sustain on a car. If I say today we have regulations taking care for 15 years of life of a product, the material in it is looked at how it can sustain further, how it can be recycled. So, you know the famous quote, right? Reduce, reuse, and recycle. So,
is what he's talking
exactly that whole that energy fan we talked about, right? How the steel goes back to the mill, and you know you make a propeller. So, that's a key thing. You know, life is a big factor in most of the products what we do.
And it's interesting. Yes, Mr. Panigrav, please.
Yeah, so you're talking about investors, right?
We discussed a lot of points, so whatever you deem fit right now.
So let me come back to the investors' point of view. You know, we regularly engage with the investors, and you know, most of the investors, at least the majority of big investors have signed the UNPRI, and which is there since 2006. It's not new, you know. So and today investors are driving ESG. Everybody knows that. You know, it is not about skepticism. But what they're looking at is they're looking at a very, very granular level. So the lens has become bigger or more stronger, I would say. And, you know, I have seen that in some cases they want to even support you. But, you know, because they have also taken targets. There are targets taken by investors on decarbonizing their portfolio. So how do they do that? They have to do it through their, you know, the companies where they are investing in, right? So they want to achieve that target also. So in some ways, you know, you can see a lot of collaborations might happen between investors and the investees, and I think that is, in my view, that is the way forward. This collaboration will bring in technologies. The collaborations will bring performance, and we should not, you know, at the end of the day, we should not forget that the big picture of how actually to scale up, speed up, and decarbonize the world. You know, otherwise, you know, you'll be doing a lot of things. You'll be doing reporting, and but at the end of the day, your emission will go on the ppm. CO2 ppm will be 420, 430, 440, 450, and all those things will go on. So I think what is important that we must understand and collaborate with all stakeholders, and then drive results. As simple as that. Yeah.
That was one of the points you all were mentioning, measuring that change. How does that come about in ESG reporting? So let's continue with the investors' perspective as well. You all have conversations with them as well. What are some of the key trends they're looking at in ESG reporting that, okay, this should be there so that I can assess whether this company is being able to do that transition or not?
So, you know, this, as I said, investor community is over demanding. And in fact, they are fed by multiple sources of, let's say, you know, there are intellectual forums which are talking about, you know, big things, 2030, 2050, 2070. Then there is a activist community which wants it now. Okay, and then there are regulations which first comes as a voluntary guidelines. It started in 2011. The NVGs came, then it became 2% mandate. Then BRSR came, then now assurance is becoming a mandate. So from voluntary to a mandate is another trend which the investors are following, and they want to stay ahead of it. So if you've been asked to reduce your carbon footprint by 2030, okay, tell me by F26 what would be your achievement by that time, and how are you looking at a future back lens? What are you doing every year, and what kind of partnerships, what kind of technology change? And in some point, in fact, we encountered that question upfront by the investors, that what are you doing with the coal that you burn in your boilers while distillation processes are on in our distilleries? So our management took a very bold step. We removed 100% coal from our direct operations. So we used to have 1,30,000 tons of carbon. Now it is only 5,000. Entire coal is moved out of it. So it's an investor call where they want to see management taking bold capex decisions also. And now we are moving into our value chain, scope 3. There are few progressive suppliers of distilled spirits who wants to participate. All of this is triggered by the demand of investors that why you want to wait till 2030. So that is the kind of encounters we are having, if I'm allowed to use that word, because the investor is saying, by the way, you told us you will have a water balance. What is your and every quarter we have an investor call. So you really have to be ahead of the curve when you're talking to your investors. If you have not achieved it, it's okay, but they want to discuss it. So that's also, I mean, I remember during our childhood days, if you have solved a maths problem and the answer is not right, you will still get marks because you followed the right steps to reach through to the answer. You can come back again and solve it and make it right, but you will be given that due that you followed the right process. That's what we are seeing with investors. They want us to tell what are you doing about it. You're failing, fine, but keep doing it.
Is that the same in the financial industry? For them, the metric would be a little different. How are investors looking here at financial reporting, ESG reporting here?
So, we are in a very unique space. So we have a clean technology company, which is in the business of supporting renewable energy and green energy, etc. So we have IFC as a partner there. And IFC is, has good performance standards, which enables us, to follow what is expected. On the other hand, we are also expected to play a very proactive role in, say, the corporate book, and also where we are, whether we're doing structured finance or we're doing wholesale lending or large corporate finance, etc. The key here is to ensure that we are playing a responsible role. So we are demanding there. When we say demanding is, what do you do to actually protect the environment, or what do you do to protect the laws, regulations, etc. And that's the list does come. So and of course the ticket size may improve if you are out following the norms that are expected of you, irrespective of whether you're a listed entity or an unlisted entity. And definitely the support is there on that side. So on one hand, the investor, on one hand, as as lenders, it's equally responsible for us to play a very proactive role. Somebody made a very interesting point. I think Mr. Menezes made a very interesting point about debris from the building construction materials. That's a huge challenge. So we're trying to partner with developers and funders to see what we could do to minimize that particular risk. So we are playing a responsible role there to fund, to support those individuals. So that's two sides of the coin.
That's very interesting to get perspective from both the sides of the coin, right? Mr. Biswas, we've heard a lot of opinions about ESG reporting, and they've been very insightful as well. Some of the things, as your closing comments, you would say something that can be done, which is happening is already right, but we can do with some improvement there. So your closing comments on this.
Well, first of all, I mean, this has been a very wide-ranging discussion, and we almost touched upon very different aspects of ESG reporting. I would like to end by just summarizing a few thoughts which I heard from everybody, right? First, I think everybody agrees that ESG reporting can be used to drive value. In fact, people want to spend less time in reporting and more time in using the data to drive value. But we also heard that there are some practical challenges. First of all, data itself is a challenge, availability of data. Then the reporting standards and frameworks need a lot of improvement. They need to be made much more simpler. They need to be made clearer. They need to be made more interoperable. They need to be made more unified. So there's a lot of work to be done there. But despite all of that, there were a couple of interesting comments. I think Mr. Panigrahi there also mentioned that this is going to force, ESG reporting is going to force people to understand their companies better. It'll ask you to, because if you're doing scope 3 reporting, you need to understand your value chain. In fact, we were doing scope 3 reporting for a particular company. They discovered tier 2, tier 3 suppliers which they did not even know about. That knowledge, that whole supplier map, helped them to become much more resilient in their supply chain. So this forces you to engage with various communities, not just suppliers, but your investor community, your customers, other stakeholders who consume reports. So that's a good thing. That's a very positive thing. And finally, I think there was a great comment made about linking this back to purpose. Because at the end of the day, and I strongly believe in this, that the purpose of business should be the long-term sustainability of the planet and all the inhabitants in it. So somehow, if we are able to link the ESG KPIs to that purpose, I think we'll solve all problems automatically.
If I may just add to what he says, as I said, I'm an optimist. If you look at, a decade ago, and if you had to speak about digital payments, all of us are very, very apprehensive whether, the net connectivity, whether it would be accepted, whether small scale vendors or, those would accept them. We all said it's difficult. Similarly here, 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, we all say, it's not that difficult. So it's the beginning of a journey, and I'm sure we'll all be in it together to meet the requirements.
I'm glad we all are optimists here, as you said, not activists who want things to happen right now. Yes, Mr. Shada.
Yeah, just to add further, I probably believe in what you said in the sense that at CEAT, the purpose is making mobility safer and smarter every day. That's the purpose statement that we live by. And, that talks about giving back to the society. The reporting and all should form as a baseline, right? It creates sort of a level playing field. And technology will come at rescue in terms of the transition. So we should also look at this as an opportunity. And sustainability is not a company's problem or a problem in the sandbox. It's a ecosystem problem. So no one company or industry even can really solve it. It has to be a collaborative approach where we need to go beyond the balance sheet and the numbers, but think long term, as you said, as a live by the purpose. And that's what's going to make a difference.
Okay, it's been so insightful. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. So more power to all of you, everyone doing it in collaboration. And with that, I would like to take a leave. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonal and panelists, for such enlightening conversations today. Clearly, ESG is an important component for business growth, and using ESG framework can bring tangible benefits to both businesses and investors. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to wrap up these conversations and ideas of a greener future, I would like to invite back on stage Raman Kalra, Senior Partner, Communications Sector Leader and Sustainability Consulting Leader, IBM Consulting, to share his closing remarks. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause.
I don't know, we need. I would take long, just about a couple of minutes. Firstly, warm thank you to all of you for taking time out on a Friday evening. That too at one extreme part of Bombay where, a lot of commute means a lot of people here. So, we at IBM believe in doing things which is relevant for the world. And trust us, nothing is more relevant to the world today than the whole discussion that we did just now. I think we are living in a world of existential crisis. We got to first make sure that we live our life. Everything else can follow. So if there is no life, if there is the kind of floods, the kind of droughts, the kind of natural calamities which is happening, in some sense makes it really irrelevant that what is happening to the businesses. I always say that the world in today's world, degrowth is a new growth. Now that's a very debatable statement that can you really degrow, because then the businesses will say that we want to grow. So I think that's a debate for maybe next time when we meet at the Green Vision Forum. It's something that we along with CNBC TV 18 we kind of we believe that will be a forum that will go on. We promise that we'll connect the dots. We won't let the ball drop. And maybe at some point in time, degrowth will become a growth for Wall Street also, and company share price will go up when the sales go down. So, but that's for the next time. On that note, thank you so much from our side. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Kalra, for those closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, with this we come to the end of what has been such an educational evening. We have learnt ways to navigate both finances and sustainability. The holistic discussions on sustainability and conservation will undeniably assist businesses to implement the same on a more intricate level. A big thank you to each one of you for being such a wonderful audience.
CNBC TV 18 presents the Green Vision Forum in association with IBM.